Say his name. Kingsley Bimpong. Say his name. Kingsley Bimpong. Say his fucking name. Kingsley Bimpong.
Hi lovelies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda Verse or Belly Dirt Channel. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload videos, you will be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and educate each and every one of us, you guys are the real MVP. So lovelies, I'm gonna be your today's host, and I have so many statistics to put up here, and we're gonna come out to talk about it. Alright lovelies, let's dive into today's video.
Another innocent black life stolen by fucking police. A U.S. postal worker was pulled over for driving on the wrong side of the road, and he was so disoriented the police couldn't tell if this was an intoxication or a real medical emergency. So they had who they call the DRE, a professional who was supposed to do field tests to try to verify which is which going on. Comes, he takes one look at this black man, and he says, "Oh, we're not doing the test. It would be a waste of time." So they take him to jail, and in the jail he's pissing on himself. He's rolling all over the floor. He can't stand up. He can't talk, and the guards marked him off in their computer system as he's fine. Nothing's wrong with him. And guess what? He had a stroke and died. He was stroking out, and then he died. Say his name. And I needed to add this last part. After the hospital declared that he had a stroke, they also declared and verified he had not one drug in his system, and he was taken to jail for DWI. Not one drug, not one crime.
He was unable to stand, covered in his own urine, rolling around on a jail cell floor, arrested for a crime that he did not commit. And how he got to this point is absolutely heartbreaking. Earlier that night, 50-year-old Kingsley Bimpong, a postal worker from Minnesota, was seen driving the wrong way into oncoming traffic. Authorities pulled him over and realized he was extremely confused.
Hey Kingsley.
Yeah.
Where do you live?
I don't know.
They then called in a drug recognition evaluator, in this case Officer Martin Jensen. His job is to spot drug-impaired drivers and spot the difference between those having a medical emergency. But instead of doing the evaluation he was trained to do, he was seen on body cam saying it would just be a whole bunch of time wasted. So instead, he was charged with a DWI and thrown into a jail cell. And that's where he laid in obvious distress as officers continuously checked on him and documented inmate and cell okay. But in reality, he was dying, having a stroke. But by the time he was taken to a hospital, he was already brain dead. The next day, pronounced deceased, and a test later confirmed that he never had any drugs in his system. They treated him as a criminal from the beginning, didn't get him the help he needed, and Kingsley Bimpong should be alive today. His family has filed a lawsuit and they're asking everybody to spread the message. Rest in peace to Kingsley. Let me know what you guys think, and as always, I'll keep you guys updated.
I currently live in Minnesota, and I need to tell you about a racial profiling case that really deserves more attention than it's getting. This man's name is Kingsley Bimpong. He's originally from Ghana, but is a permanent US resident. Works as a postal worker here in Minnesota. One evening in November 2024, Kingsley left his shift early, complaining of a headache, and as he was driving home, he ended up going into oncoming traffic and hitting a median. Kingsley was pulled over by the police, and once he started speaking with the officer realized that he wasn't able to answer questions such as where he worked or where he lived. So this officer called for a drug recognition evaluator. The purpose of a DRE is to use their training in order to distinguish between a medical emergency and when someone is impaired by the influence of a substance. Officers noted that there was no smell of alcohol present. However, when this DRE was called to evaluate Kingsley, Officer Martin Jensen stated that evaluating him would be a whole bunch of time wasted. DRE evaluations typically take from 30 to 45 minutes, and instead they skipped that entirely and placed Kingsley under arrest for a DWI. After having his blood drawn by the Eagan police at their headquarters, he was transported to the Dakota County Jail. At the jail, Kingsley is seen stumbling and he is unable to complete the booking process, so he's placed in a holding cell. In the holding cell, he was writhing on the floor after he fell and he urinated on himself multiple times. Guards are legally mandated to perform wellness checks on people in holding cells. The guards that performed these checks on Kingsley continuously for over 3 hours wrote, "Inmate and cell okay." It was after over 3 hours that eventually the jail nurse was called because a female guard noticed seizure-like activity and him foaming at the mouth. They administered him Narcan, which did nothing, and then finally he was transported to a hospital where it was found that he suffered a massive brain bleed. Kingsley had had a stroke, and ultimately he was pronounced brain dead. Ultimately, both the hospital and the state crime lab have found that there were 0 drugs present in his system. Kingsley's family has filed a lawsuit against the correctional officers, the Eagan police officers, and Dakota County as a whole. As of right now, the city of Eagan and Dakota County have not responded to the lawsuit. Kingsley was nothing more than a man having a medical emergency, and the people who were in place to save him ended up killing him. Kingsley's life mattered, and if that DRE officer had done his job in the first place, he would have recognized a medical emergency. This was racial profiling every step of the way, and he did not need to die.
So as a nurse, I've watched people mistake medical emergencies for bad behavior. So what happened in Minnesota proves that ignorance can absolutely kill. Kingsley Bimpong, a 50-year-old postal worker, left work early with a splitting headache. Hours later, Eagan police stopped him for erratic driving. Instead of recognizing he might be having a stroke, they automatically assumed intoxication. They arrested him, took him to the Dakota County Jail, and for 5 hours and 40 minutes, he sat there slurring, drooling, losing mobility, while officers logged cell okay. He finally collapsed, and by the time paramedics were called, it was already over. The autopsy showed a massive hemorrhagic stroke. Now his family has filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Eagan Police, Dakota County, and multiple correctional officers, accusing them of deliberate indifference and failure to provide medical care. The complaint details how staff weren't even up to date on CPR or first aid training. So from a medical standpoint, every FAST, F-A-S-T stroke sign was flashing red. Face droop, arm weakness, speech difficulty, time critical. This wasn't just tragic, it was absolutely preventable. So as healthcare providers, we know minutes matter. Law enforcement and jail staff need mandatory training in recognizing medical emergencies, stroke, hypoglycemia, overdose, seizure, before another life is written off as resisting or under the influence. Medical neglect isn't discipline, it's death. Training saves lives.
I am not surprised by the treatment that the postal worker got in police custody because he was black. I'm not. There are so many people on here who are crying, who are white, who act like they don't understand that we're getting this type of treatment. That's why black people don't want to seek medical attention. They don't want to go to hospitals and urgent cares because we don't have medical emergencies. Black people don't. We don't need medical treatment. We don't need medication. To these people, we're subhuman. That's the exact way they treated that black postal worker who died in police custody because he was having a stroke, and they said he was under the influence. The only reason why we know about all of this is because his family is suing the police department, and so it's public now. Otherwise, we wouldn't have known because this happened some months back. We wouldn't have known. This man was in the police cell in police custody, urinating on himself. Cognitive skills completely gone because he was going brain dead while he was in their custody. They lied on paperwork and said we checked on him every 30 minutes and he was fine. He was fine. There was no way he was fine. He was going down the opposite side of the road. When you found him, you cut off your body camera and said, is this man having a stroke? And then you said, well, we don't want to waste resources on medical equipment checking for his, if he's having a stroke. Because we're sure he's under the influence. Obviously, he's black with dreads. He's got to be on drugs. They gave him 3 rounds of Narcan while he was in his cell, urinated on himself. You can see his arm bent back behind his body because he cognitively could not control his body movement. Those cognitives, he couldn't. He didn't even know what was going on. He probably didn't even know where he was. It's so hurtful to see that. And it's scary at the same time because that could have been my husband. That could have been my son. That could have been anybody I know that's black. That could have been my brother. You never know. But when you're black, this is what you experience. And no, it's not surprising to any of us to see that video. If anything, it angers us. It does. It really does. But we're not surprised. We're not. We're not shocked. We're not surprised. This is just our life. This is what we go through. This is what we experience.
Industry in America has a problem with promoting the wrong people. That's why that postal worker died in the hands of police. That's why Kyren Lacy passed away, George Floyd, and so many other people. That's why it's so much BS happening in this country. Because they always put the wrong people in position. The ones who really care about their job and will take it serious is always overlooked. Because they'll make everyone else's job harder. Because they'll make people start having to hold themselves to that high standard. They'll come in and set a bar that's unreachable by most of their coworkers. So then they keep you demoted and overlooked in the shadows. And I guarantee you, it's the officer right now who would have loved to be the one who shows up and determine if a person is under the influence of drugs or having a medical emergency. They would have never made a mistake, been flawless. Here comes this guy who complains about it being too much paperwork. And like I said, this happens in every industry in America. You've seen it. You work a job. You've seen someone be put in a position where you know they damn well don't deserve that, but they know how to politic. They know how to kiss up. They know how to crack the right jokes, or they know the right people. Until we start holding the people who put them in position accountable, it will never stop happening. Yes, we want to hold the officers accountable. Yes, we want to hold the person who made a mistake accountable, but who allowed you to make that mistake? Who gave you that power? They need to be held accountable as well. Every industry in America has a problem with promoting the wrong people. That's why that postal worker died in the hands of police. That's why Kyren Lacy passed away, George Floyd, and so many other people.
It's not about race, but y'all keep finding reasons for us to prove to you that it is always about race. It's always about the race. 50-year-old Kingsley Bimpong left work early as a Minnesota postal worker because he had a headache and his vision wasn't right. So he said, I'm going to go home early. In the midst of that, he ended up turning down a street into the opposite way he should have been traveling, which made the road unsafe for everybody. So he is pulled over and taken in. They asked for Officer Martin Jensen, who is a drug recognition evaluator, to take a look at him because they're like, I don't know, something may be a little bit off. They're asking him questions. He wasn't answering the questions and making any sense. And they were like, can you evaluate him? And he is on body cam saying it will just be a whole bunch of time wasted. So instead of doing his job and actually evaluating Kingsley, he says it would be a waste of time. There is a complete process that he is supposed to do to evaluate this man, and he refused to do the evaluation. So they instead throw Kingsley in a cell and charge him with DWI. Kingsley is in the cell, using the restroom on himself, on the floor, unable to get his body together, unable to get help. They walk by his cell and say, oh, officer checked, he's okay in there. How was he okay on the floor using the restroom on himself? He was having a complete stroke. He was having a stroke probably when he actually left work early, but it was very obvious when the officer is trying to ask him simple questions and his answers are not making sense. And in the video that I saw, you can see his body starting to be numb on the left side. So y'all saw he was having issues, and the original officer that pulled him over does seem to be the only one that really was like trying to fight for it. But the person who was supposed to give that evaluation says it would be a waste of time. When they finally decide to get Kingsley to the doggone hospital, he is considered brain dead. His family did go ahead and decide to pull him off of life support on November the 19th, but they have filed a lawsuit. And they did go ahead and name 3 officers in the lawsuit and 7 correctional officers from the jail in the lawsuit. It is about race. If it was not about race, the white officer who was supposed to evaluate him would not say it would be a waste of time. He would have actually done his job he was assigned to do and evaluate him. When the signs were there that something was not correct, something was not right, something was off, he would have paid attention to the signs instead of assuming that something was in his system. Because when they did the evaluation, not a single item, nothing that should not have been there was in his system. He was having a medical emergency, and because he was a black man, they assumed the worst, and that man is no longer here only because he was black. Y'all keep saying it's not about race.
He was unable to stand, covered in his own urine, rolling around on a cold jail cell floor, arrested for a crime he didn't commit. And by the time someone realized what was truly happening, it was too late. 50-year-old Kingsley Bimpong should still be alive today. He was a postal worker from Minnesota, a man who woke up one morning, went to work like any other day, and somehow ended up dying in police custody. Not because he was violent, not because he resisted arrest, but because the system chose laziness over humanity. That night, Kingsley was seen driving on the wrong side of the road, confused, disoriented, lost. When police stopped him, they asked, "Where do you live?" And he said, "I don't know." At that moment, at that single moment, any officer with compassion or training should have realized this man isn't high, this man isn't drunk, this man is in distress. But instead, what did they do? They call in a drug recognition evaluator, Officer Martin Jensen, whose literally job is to tell the difference between someone high and someone suffering a medical emergency. Yet, on the body cam, Jesse can be heard saying that doing the evaluation would just be a whole bunch of time wasted. Imagine that, a man's life reduced to a bunch of time wasted. So rather than doing his duty, rather than running a few basic checks or calling paramedics, they charged Kingsley with a DWI and threw him into a jail cell. There, cameras recorded him rolling around on the floor, unable to stand, growling, soaked in urine, and visibly in pain. Officers would peek through the bars, mark their little log saying inmate and cell okay. But nothing about Kingsley was okay. He was dying. He was having a stroke, a medical emergency that, if treated on time, could have been survived. By the time they finally took him to a hospital, he was already brain dead. The next day, he was pronounced deceased, and toxicological tests showed he had no drugs or alcohol in his system. You know what is crazy? This is not an isolated mistake. It's a reflection of something much deeper in American culture. A sickness that eats through every institution, every department, every company, every heritage. America has a problem with promoting the wrong people, and that is why men like Kingsley died. It's why George Floyd died. It's why Kyren Lacy died. It's why we keep hearing about the stories that make no logical sense. People dying not because of a lack of knowledge, but because of a lack of care. You see, every job, every field, every organization has that one type of person. The one who actually gives a damn, the one who reads the manual, the one who takes pride in doing things right. And then there's the other type, the one who just wants a paycheck, who cuts corner, who avoid responsibilities, who rolls their eyes even when something requires effort. And in this country, somehow that second type always rises to the top. They get promoted, they get rewarded, they get power because they know how to play politics. They know how to smile at the right person. They know how to crack the right jokes. They know who to flatter, who to obey, and who to undermine. And the ones who genuinely care, the ones who challenge mediocrity, are left in the shadows. So what happens? If you get officers like Martin Jensen, who can literally say it's a waste of time, why a man dies in front of him and nobody around him feels empowered to speak up. Because this country doesn't just punish the bad, it punishes the good. You ever walk somewhere and seen someone get promoted and thought to yourself, how in the hell did they get the job? You ever seen a boss who knows nothing about leadership, who talks more than they listen, who silence the only person who actually knows what is going on? That is America. This system rewards conformity and punishes competency. It rewards ego and punishes empathy. It rewards those who follow others even when those others kill innocent people. And let's not act like this is just a police problem. This is a cultural problem. It exists in hospitals where doctors ignore nurses who actually notice patient symptoms. It exists in schools where teachers who speak truth get punished out because they make others uncomfortable. It exists in offices, warehouses, and corporations across this country. Everywhere you look, the people who care are silenced, and the people who don't care are promoted. Kingsley death wasn't a mistake, it was the inevitable outcome of a broken system that values conveniences over character. Think about it, a man was dying right in front of trained professionals, and their response was to fill out paperwork, make false check-ins, and pretend everything was fine. Because the system told them it's better to fake it than to face it. This is what happens when you have people in power who are allegedly to accountability. They don't want to write reports, they don't want to be questioned, they don't want to work harder, they just want to cost. So they treat human like an inconveniency. And if you look closely, that mindset is everywhere. That don't make any my job harder mentality what leads to wrongful death, wrongful incarceration, and wrongful neglect. It's not always hate that kills. Sometimes it's pure indifference. When George Floyd was pinned to the ground, what did he see? An officer with his hands in his pockets. That is the posture of indifference. That same posture killed Kingsley Bimpong because when you stop seeing people as humans, you stop caring if they live or die. Now let's talk about responsibility. Yes, we should hold the officer accountable, absolutely, but that is not enough because for every officer who fails, there is supervisor who hired him, a manager who ignored complaints, a department head who allowed it, and a system that rewards laziness and showed incompetence. If all we do is fire one man, the problem will repeat itself. We must ask who gave him that badge, who said he was fit for duty, who trained him or didn't, who approved his promotion. Until those people face accountability, nothing changes. Kingsley's death represents every time America looked away from truth because it was inconvenient. It represents every time someone said, I don't want to get involved. Every time someone said, there is above my pay grade. Every time someone decides to just do the bare minimum. That bare minimum mentality kills people. And the irony, the people who could have saved him, the good ones, are probably sitting somewhere watching this story unfold, shaking their heads, knowing they could have done better. But they were never promoted. They were never given the chance because this system keeps the right people powerless and the wrong people in charge. When you put lazy people in positions of authority, the results are predictable chaos, strategy, and cover ups. When you put cowards in charge of courage based professions like policing, medicine, education, you destroy lives. This isn't just about racism, though racism is a factor. It's about institutional roots, a culture that prefers comfort over correction. You can't train empathy, you can't teach integrity through a PowerPoint. You can only hire people who already have it and promote those who prove it. And until America understands that, we will keep watching innocent people die in systems that we are supposed to protect them. Kingsley's story hurt because it's so unnecessary. There were multiple chances to save him, each one ignored, each one dismissed as too much time wasted. That phrase should haunt this country. Too much time wasted. Because that is what this nation has done for decades. Too much time wasted defending indefensible. Too much time wasted pretending the system works. Too much time wasted burying the truth under the red tape and excuses. And it's not just the police, it's corporate America too. It's government offices, healthcare, education, everywhere you turn, there is someone in power who shouldn't be there. Someone who gets promoted because they knew the right people. Someone who got a title because they don't rock the boat. Someone who stays in power because they keep heads on, heads down. Meanwhile, the people who cares, the people who fight for change, the people who try to raise the standard are labeled as difficult, troublemakers, or not a team player. That is why the wrong people stay in power, because the right ones are pushed out. And the price of that dynamic isn't just inefficiency, it's death. Kingsley's death, George Floyd death, Kyren Lacy death, and countless other whose name we may never know. So what is the solution? It starts with accountability, not just at the bottom, but at the top. Not just for those who act, but for those who allow. If your supervisor overlooks misconduct, they are guilty. If a department hides a mistake, they are guilty. If a politician funds broken system without reform, they are guilty. Accountability must go beyond the individual, because this isn't about one bad apple. It's about the entire outrage. Kingsley deserves better. He deserves an officer who saw him as human. He deserves a system that valued his life more than paperwork. He deserves a country where doing the right thing isn't optional. Until that happens, these stories you keep repeating, different names, different cities, same outcome, same excuses, and each time the question will remain: how many more waste of time will it take before this nation finally values life over laziness?
And if you watch up to this extent, don't forget to please leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So lovelies, why not just share your thought? Subscribe to this channel if you're yet to do that, and I will see you lovelies when I upload the next one.